The young are more anti-immigration than older generations in some parts of Europe. Guidance analysis has found as attitudes towards migration hardened in mainland Europe before EU elections in June. Analysis of pan-EU polling reveals that in some countries, typically those in Eastern Europe, negative attitudes towards migrations are more commonly held. The findings come ahead of an unexpected surge in support for far-right parties in European Parliament elections in June and follow recent national elections in the Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, France, in which young people voted in unprecedented numbers for nationalist and Eurosceptic parties. Across all of Europe, baby boomers still the generation most likely to hold anti-immigration views. But in some member states, millennials, those born between 1980 to 1997, the Gen X, after 1997 have just as negative and more negative attitudes towards migration from outside the EU. Why Europe's young are more anti-immigration than the old? Share of each generation saying they feel negatively about immigration from outside Europe. Slovenia, France, Poland, Hungary are where these statistics are higher. But truth be told, you would have expected that the older generations will be more anti-migration than the younger ones, because the younger ones are living in digital age. They have access to information. They have access to information that the older generations don't have. But it equally means that they have refused, some of them have refused to be acquainted with the modern day reality, to understand that no matter how anti-immigration you are, the truth of the matter is that in some capacity, your country still needs migrants, but legal migrants, in quotes, legal migrants, because your country cannot do alone without migrants, because there are some working spaces that your countries need expertise from outside the EU to come in and fill in. And your population is aging, and some of your people don't want to have children because they see children as an expense, they see it as a stress. So, because even according to the statistics that was reviewed some weeks ago, in 30 years to come, 50% of the working spaces today will be vacant. So, these younger generations that are more anti-migration than the older generation, how do you feel? Or how do you feel the impact of these 50% shortages in your working spaces will hit your economy? Have you tried to ask yourself what your economies will look like in that 30 years' time if your government don't take or implement the right policies to welcome migrant legal workers to come in to fill these spaces? If your government don't implement policies that encourages people to have children in some of the countries in EU here where your populations are aging and your people are not having children. So there's a whole lot. Yes. And if these countries where you don't want their citizens to be coming to your country decide to be taking a different approach when it comes to foreign policies with your EU countries, it won't be funny to your countries either. And some of these EU countries should not equally forget that Africa, their yearly GDP mostly come from African countries that they colonize, that they see dictate and decide what happens in these countries.